History often remembers the Third Reich as a terrifyingly efficient, fully mechanized industrial superpower that operated with surgical precision. Post-war cinema and propaganda reels cemented this image, showcasing endless columns of tanks to project a facade of infinite industrial capability. This image hides a desperate financial reality. In 1939, the regime lacked enough foreign currency to buy basic supplies, and their strategic oil reserves were poised to run dry in months. Even at the height of its power, the military relied on horses for the vast majority of its transport and supply logistics. The vaunted mechanized army was largely a myth created for the cameras. The Nazi economy functioned as a massive, violent grift, the deadliest financial pyramid scheme in human history. The regime funded its early rearmament by breaking the free labor market. They banned unions, outlawed strikes, and locked wages at 1932 levels to extract every possible ounce of value from the working class. Control was exerted through a specific bureaucratic tool, the Arbeitsbuch. This document functioned as a rigid internal passport. Workers were legally tied to their factory benches. Without an employer's signature in this book, they couldn't quit, move, or negotiate for better conditions. While propaganda promised every citizen a personal car, the money collected for these Volkswagens was diverted to the military. No consumer ever received a car, and the public instead faced chronic shortages of even basic foods. Long before the first shots of the war were fired, the state had turned its own workforce into economic hostages. To hide the massive debt of this rearmament from global markets, central banker Hjalmar Schacht developed a system of creative accounting. He created a Dunning corporation to issue MEFO bills, promissory notes paying weapons contractors without actual currency. This shadow deficit exploded as the military complex grew. On paper, the budget remained balanced, but in reality, the state was sinking into billions in unpayable debt. Because this debt was hidden and the treasury was empty, the economy became a ticking time bomb. It required a massive, immediate injection of stolen capital just to avoid a total default. The state first turned inward to delay the collapse, initiating the violent seizure of Jewish wealth during Aryanization to fill its depleted coffers. By 1939, those MEFO bills were reaching maturity, and the state had no cash to pay them. The only way to prevent a total currency collapse was to seize the gold and cash reserves of neighboring nations. In occupied Western Europe, the regime established a parasitic model, forcing conquered nations to pay astronomical occupation costs that effectively financed their own subjugation. Even this looting failed to address the core problem. Stolen cash couldn't produce the rubber, steel, or oil needed to sustain a global war against industrialized powers. Blitzkrieg was a desperate economic strategy for a bankrupt nation, short, profitable plundering campaigns designed to win before the resources ran out. Driven by a total lack of domestic fuel, the regime launched a desperate gamble to secure the oil fields of the Caucasus. This gamble forced them to stretch horse-drawn supply lines across thousands of miles, a logistical impossibility for a long-term conflict. The offensive stalled in the ruins of Stalingrad. Without the resources they gambled everything to seize, the German military machine began a slow, irreversible collapse. This catastrophic defeat was the inevitable endpoint for an economy that had traded its long-term solvency for immediate, violent expansion. In the final years, Albert Speer attempted to market himself as an industrial genius. In reality, he was managing a failing state that had already reached its absolute production limit. The regime promoted wonder weapons like the V2 as a distraction. These expensive projects consumed precious resources, while the military lacked enough conventional fuel to even fly their existing planes. The system's absurdity continued until the very end. In April 1945, with the nation reduced to rubble and enemy troops closing in, the bureaucracy was still mailing out notices for unpaid taxes. Totalitarian control did not create industrial efficiency. Instead, a system fueled by fraud, plunder, and unpaid promissory notes eventually ran out of victims to rob.